Hiya! Welcome to this, my 90th episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Sarah J. Aman, sifting my basket of media memories, and in this installment, titled Death, Rattle, Dazzle, I talk all the murders in the building with friend and fellow fan Brad Johnson, also the prisoner, nutty commercials, and it's time once again to update VideoFuzzy by the numbers. Welcome to the show! He doesn't have it on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy. First and foremost, congratulations to the cast and crew at Dakota Stage Limited production of Stephen Sondheim's Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Truly outstanding work. We were there, packed house opening night, tiny little space, but they used all of it. Lighting, effects, madhouse scene out into the audience, strong costuming and makeup, and while every aspect of the storytelling is jaw-droppingly over the top, the core was heartfelt and, well, it's Sweeney Todd. You're not really anticipating this is going to end well, but there's a lot of truly satisfying comeuppance finale. Well done. And now, VideoFuzzy presents Fuzzy Feature. It's a departure for this project, and as you'll see, I've absolutely found stuff to talk about in my classic collection. But with the third season finale of Only Murders in the Building, it's time to focus on this adorable little show archived in my current direct-to-digital collection on discs X489, X494, and X495. When you talk about contemporary whodunits, Rian Johnson has absolutely been killing it on the big screen. The Knives Out series is phenomenal. I wish it was based on a book series with 1,000 titles. I would never tire reading of Benoit Blanc, his curious nature, and his extraordinary talent for observation. I've got Knives Out on my shelf, and Netflix production of Glass Onion Knives Out Mystery archived at disc X476. Kenneth Branagh I want to be more enthusiastic about. His adaptations of Agatha Christie classics have been pure art, lavishly beautiful spectacles cast wonderfully and hold reasonably true to the storytelling. I think if his detective character was called something else, I'd prefer it. Detective Inspector Battle, maybe. I never bought Peter Ustinov as Poirot. No more do I buy Branagh. No more do I buy Poirot's loneliness, that haunted, lip-shorn emotional wreckage we saw at the end of Death of the Nile does not jibe with the fastidiously self-possessed, self-assured, vain-approaching, vainglorious Poirot. His outsized portrayal absolutely fills its big-screen setting, of course, and David Suchet would have trouble stepping into the giant world Branagh crafted for his Poirot to inhabit, but I feel he'd do it with greater verisimilitude. Since that's not how movies work, I will say Branagh clearly loves these stories and these characters, and I've enjoyed watching his beautiful reimagination of a beloved world. Honorable mention, Stieg Larsson's posthumously published Millennium Trilogy, expanded per Wigglemania by David Langenkrantz into 7 titles as of this recording, and thus far selling more than 100 million copies altogether, has been adapted to 2 films, the first of which, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, was astonishing, and I've got the FX presentation archived to disc X042. The sequel, The Girl in the Spider's Web, was somewhat less compelling, but I archived that FXX presentation to disc X341. Then you have Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez crafting these delightful little true crime mysteries for the small screen. I wasn't aware of any of them as other than comic geniuses, or, in the case of Gomez, really much at all. Sorry, I'm an old. But from the first moment that fire alarm evacuated everyone in the Arconia, these 3 lonely misfits discovered their shared love of Cinda Koenig's true crime podcast, All Is Not Okay in Oklahoma. The die was cast to spin out in exactly this way. In this unlikely trio of actor Charles Hayden Savage, Broadway director Oliver Putnam, and artist Mabel Mora, we had clashing personalities, we had charming discoveries, we had this extraordinary mix of economic fortunes. Mabel is essentially squatting in her aunt's apartment. Oliver is barely keeping body and soul together after some spectacular flops, like a whole cast of mermen flopping onto a stage, and Charles was receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, not just from his long-running TV crime procedural, but from this Angel in Flip-Flops novelty song he recorded with one-time girlfriend's daughter Lucy, which had been sampled by a bunch of artists and recently remastered and, according to the band Twitchy, had a video released. Side note, I watched it. It was ridiculous. With the building itself, we had delightfully quirky neighbors, many of whom showed up at Arconia board meetings and other gatherings, which seemed to happen way more often than I'd have ever had patience for, regardless of where I lived. I appreciate the presence of walls and doors so as to be blissfully unaware of my neighbors. At the Arconia, however, the vents let you eavesdrop and allow cooking smells to waft through the building. There are secret passages between apartments, and the central courtyard allows you to enjoy the musical stylings of your fellow residents. And the elevator is just brimming with clues, chance meetings, and, in at least one significant instance, a great big famous corpse. Per season 3, specifically, Paul Rudd as Ben Glenroy, an outsized personality way too big for the stage. Oh, by about 20 feet of CGI Cobro, was just kept happy death daying through the second season finale and the third season opener. He was dead. He was alive. He was dead again, as Uma Heller so delicately reacted as Ben's corpse bashed through the glass ceiling of the elevator car. Our trio of horrified true crime podcasting heroes nimbly fled at the very nick of time to avoid being tumbled onto. You gotta be fucking kidding me! Ben was starring in Oliver Putnam's mystery production Death Rattle, slated for one stinker of a review by persnickety Times theater critic Maxine. Hence, Oliver's resolve in the wake of Ben's murder to rewrite the show as a musical, stuffed with nothing but showstoppers. Producer Donna DeMeo had her doubts, but her son, Cliff, was transfixed. This must be the new direction for his production debut of Death Rattle. Make that Death Rattle Dazzle. All singing, all dancing, now with more lobsters, and count 'em 3 infant suspects, the Pickwick triplets. And while the show got reworked, misdirection kept us guessing between Ben's overt love interest, Kimber, Ben's possibly jealous older brother, Dickie, Ben's impossibly talented understudy, Ty, Ben's suspicious security guard, Bobo, Meryl Streep as Oliver's girlfriend, the Broadway breakout nanny, Loretta, the creepy mother-son production team of Donna and Cliff DeMeo, or the sponsor-chasing freelance yodeler, Howard, or the dreamy documentarian, or a Pickwick triplet. I mean, which of the Pickwick triplets did it? Who of the crew commit this crime? Might a little brat make a mommy go splat? That story pretty gory for a nursery rhyme. Which of the Pickwick triplets did it? Which of the spawn had the brawn to kill? The baby tried for matricide? Coochie coochie coo. Time for you to admit it. So quick as a whip got a Pickwick triplet did it. The rhyme scheme patter puzzle gets more complicated from there as our hapless constable probes Penelope, Patrick, and Paco for motive, means, and opportunity, concluding in the end he may need to explore beyond the nursery for the solution to this dastardly crime. Only Murders in the Building has been fantastic this season. The murder was outrageous, Oliver's musical was impossible, Paul Rudd was fun, Meryl Streep was divine, and the further insights we gained into life at the Arconia were delicious. I truly enjoyed that scheme Oliver and Charles pulled on Detective Donna Williams' eavesdrop on her suspect interviews at the theater. It was such a brilliant piece of character-driven misdirection, built directly on what they knew about her from previous run-ins. And despite her taking the lead on this show's eponymous podcast, it's weird not to discuss Mabel before now. I guess the focus of the season has been on everything but the podcast, and it's kind of problematic. The podcast centers on the main trio's passion for true crime, but this season is focused on Oliver's desperate need for a Broadway hit, and Charles's involvement in that, and very briefly his romance with his former makeup artist, Joy. Given these preoccupations, Mabel actually gathered a second trio to record with, documentarian Tobert and Arconia friend Theo, and the first episode of the Bloody Mabel reboot was released by the end of episode 7. But in all reality, there wouldn't have been much to release before that. The funeral was sprawling and tough to leverage for clues, though she and Charles were terrorized by a Glenroy fanboy, and the cast gift hanky clues seemed like a dead end. podcast theme was sustained by the syndicating overtures to join her in another venture that Oliver steadfastly refused to consider any one of his cast members to be a suspect. He was also predisposed to overlook his production's financial backers. Of course, anything that might harm the production he was going to nix. So their investigation progressed pretty slowly this season, absolutely. A friend of mine said Only Murders is brushing up against Cabot Cove syndrome, the body count of this high-end townhouse is approaching street crime numbers. I had a chance to touch base with him over my vacation recently. I'm thrilled to include his comments here. Brad?
Yeah, we were talking about Only Murders in the Building with my friend Brad Johnson from Pittsburgh.
How's me, by the way? How's it going?
That's him. I wanted to check in with you because we had been talking about the show, and its third season. Just saw the finale not too long ago. It was amazing, I thought.
It was good. It was good.
And coming up, fourth season looked like it's going to be a huge... I don't know how spoiler-free we can actually be at this point. It's been over a month. Come on. If you don't want to hear spoilers about Only Murders in the Building because you're holding on to that last episode for Friends and Forever, skip ahead. I just wanted to be able to just talk about anything with my friends out here. Yeah, god damn, though.
Well, what's the part that surprised you? Like the killer or like what Sad's getting killed at the end?
The part that is the who, because I wanted Jan to get out early for good behavior and for Saz and Jan to have just this wonderful little spin-off.
Right. You don't get out for good behavior when you kill somebody.
And when psychotically, I mean, goddamn, the things that she was actually doing at the end, you can't. But. Right. But on TV, you get away with so much. So I just didn't want her to die because I just really wanted to see that happen. I love her. I love her so Jane. Much. God damn.
Who's her actress?
It's Jane Lynch, and the interaction between her and Steve Martin. Steve Martin. Mm-hmm. I've got all the Martins wrong. Right. The interaction between them is just so amazing. I just did not know how you built that kind of chemistry.
They did have great chemistry in the first season. Everyone on that show has good chemistry, I think.
It's beautiful.
Like I have not seen bad chemistry like with any of the characters,
and even people who are supposed to come out of nowhere. It's just generalized New York. It's just attitude, and it's so easy to accept.
And it's funny because I feel like New York often feels very self-important in the media. Like everything is based in New York, and it gets kind of tired. But what I like about Only Murders in the Building is that it feels like an actual slice of the city. Like I love the diversity on the show, and it's treated as completely incidental. Like they don't suck their own dicks for having a diverse cast. It's just part of the show.
And I think it's really fit. I mean, they brought some really, really talented actors.
Absolutely.
I mean, Detective Williams is amazing. Selena Gomez is just incredible, and she brings so much good energy.
Oh, absolutely.
And I admit this early in my own discussion of the shows. I am an old and completely unfamiliar with her work, and so I went back and I just okay.
She's a Disney Channel graduate.
And also just 2 number 1 hits that I didn't have any. She was just not on my radar until this show. And what's really wonderful about this is like the way that the show has progressed. Like first season, you see all of these loners kind of find some kind of like a bond to each other.
Right.
And what I was noticing about the second season is that you had an imposter syndrome because you found out like Cindy Caney was always Cindy Caney. She became this podcasting person, and then this wannabe comes in from her podcast to like try to form her own. And
you mean the assistant?
Yeah, Poppy. And the art woman who was dating Selena was
Kira Delevingne's character.
She was like, okay, I just put on this front because I'm British, but I have to pretend to be interesting, and I just want to make art or just be a part of this world. And so you had all these people who were like, oh, am I actually a podcaster? Am I actually an artist? Am I actually like... Because they were kind of like creating their characters. And there's some season... Yeah, and that was all around the death and investigation of Ronnie. So we learned so much more about the Arconia that season, too. It was just,
with the whole like backstory and all that.
And Charles's daughter, we've discovered so much more about Lucy, and she led us into the building some more, and it was really an interesting story.
And also, just like his father, too. They're hearing about his father, like they think he was having with the one lady.
And it was so interesting, and how they like thread that through. It's like, how are you going to keep this little crime podcast interesting? And it's like the third season, it's almost a non-factor because it's all about Oliver reestablishing himself as a director. It's all about Charles's rebuilding his skills for the stage. I never had to know how to do this stuff. We could always do a take or do another take or and it felt like Mabel actually fell off the radar a little bit.
Well, it seems like she's trying to figure out where she's going. Like, the one thing I didn't like about that last season was that there was no real resolution to that whole plot of her turning 30, figure out what she wants to do with her life. It's like, it would have been nice if we had, even if they didn't completely conclude it, if we had like given some kind of closure with that, instead of her deciding to more or less break up with Talbot.
Yeah.
And who doesn't love Jesse Williams?
Yeah, I know. I mean, good Lord, I've loved him since Grey's Anatomy. It's just astonishing.
And I've seen his naked ass in Take Me Out. I actually saw that on Broadway.
Yeah, we had a continuity problem anyway because they were off for a year. Well, the stage play got developed, and then Glenroy was developed and brought in, and so was Meryl and everybody, and it was just like, okay, very, very, very cool. And now we're focused on this story. But the actual podcast, I don't think their first episode happened until like well into the season. So it's still a show about a podcast. But I mean, the only way they kept that thread going was to have like Cindy reach out. Oh God, I'm forgetting her name. Liz Lemon.
Yeah, Cindy Canning.
Yeah, she reached out to her to kind of keep the podcast thing. And it's like, at first they realized, you know what, we couldn't do this because it didn't happen in the building, and then, well, it did. Well, you know, actually, that would create a lot of media buzz for the show.
True that. And then he actually died.
And I loved the way they kept, like, whodunit. Like, it was a really potential for, like...
Well, I had my hunch that it was going to be the mother and her son just being creepy as hell.
That was, yeah.
Like, I had a hunch it was going to be them. I just couldn't figure out why it would have been them. Like, my theory was that dead guy... I thought he was going to be Cliff's father. And I thought that was going to be, like, a whole scandal. But, like, I guess not.
No, the way they did it, and it was kind of foreshadowing through Meryl taking the blame for Vicky. And it was like, oh, okay, well, we should have seen that was something that might happen. But it's like, okay, no, she's actually going to take the fall for her producers. And Chip, I think, was his name, because she was dying anyway, and she felt like she could save him.
Right.
Like, well,
it just seemed like you had, like, the whole thing where it's like, Meryl Streep's character, like with Vicky, like her that being her son, and like if Cliff had been Ant-Man's son, I thought that would have been an interesting little parallel. What was this character's name again?
Oh, it was Ben.
Ben,
yes. Ben Glenroy, I think.
Like, we can't just call him Ant-Man this whole episode. That was tempting.
Well, I mean, this run is fantastic,
right?
And I just really got me into the character right away because he was such an actor. It was just like, I'm walking the set. I'm not any more important than you, get out of my way. And everybody is like,
right. Yeah, it seems like he's this prima donna. Like, as the season goes on, you find like all these new vulnerabilities with him.
I loved that. I was just like, oh my God, he is so lost in himself right now.
Exactly.
Everybody gets stage fright. Just come on out.
And like his little knitting circle with the old ladies. Now, fun fact: the old Asian lady, she played a villain on the Marvel show Iron Fist and also Daredevil. Okay. She played Madame Gao. Like, she's like the leader of the Hand, where she played like this mystic martial artist. So like, I love her actress. I'm blanking on her name, but she's been in some stuff actually.
And so was able to like get some actors come in, like maybe draw some talent that. And I love the way that it all happened, because it kept me guessing the whole time.
Right.
You had your theory. I didn't. I had no clue that I never know who's ever done it.
Well, I knew it wasn't going to be the girl, like that one Asian girl. Like, I had a feeling it wasn't going to be her because they already did the whole jilted lover angle. I had a feeling they weren't going to go there again.
And they don't seem to retread a lot of things, although there are a lot of old favorites in murder mystery shows. But I wanted to check in with you because you had a theory about the Jessica Fletcher thing happening to this building, which seems like it shouldn't be a crime scene as often as it is.
Well, just to go people in at home, when I was talking about it, I made a post on Facebook just comparing the two shows. Murder, She Wrote is based in the fictional Cabot Cove, Maine, or is it Cabot Cove?
Cabot Cove.
Cabot Cove, okay, fair enough. I was really little when it was on, sorry. sorry. But basically, more people got killed in that one little ass town than there were more people getting murdered in that one little town than the entire state of Maine in real life.
I know.
And it's like,
it ran forever, too. I mean, it's just like, God damn. Every time she did a book tour, anywhere she would go, there'd be a dead body. On Earth, how could it not be her at some point?
It's like, Jessica appears and everyone's like, the angel of death! Oh, we're going to die. We're going to die.
She's just the nicest person. Oh, dear, murder.
Right?
Who could have predicted?
Exactly.
All of us at this point.
Right?
Your publisher at this point.
Pretty much. Like
promotions person.
The publisher's probably killing just to keep her in work.
Yeah, almost. So, in fact, when does she have time to write anything?
Exactly.
But yeah, so many people are dying in this building. I was thinking, well, okay, every time we've had a dead body show up, it's made sense. Mabel had a connection to Tim Kono.
Right.
And then, we almost had another murder with Jan. He did a attempted murder with...
Well, she almost blew up the fucking building.
Yeah, that would have been all of them. And
then the old lady, Bunny. Yeah.
That was just so friggin' calculated. And it was between not just Poppy, but...
the cop.
Rappaport. And had between the two of them. So that was kind of an interesting kind of take on it. And it was as artificial as maybe you were saying, like everything else was. It was like, hey, maybe we didn't need this murder to happen, but she needed this murder to happen in order to have work.
Exactly.
So then this third one is like, that was incidental, but it was all because it happened at Alder's apartment, and it happened it's like at the Arconia. But and he was living there too, so it was like he had taken over Amy Schumer's apartment. So
I didn't realize he was living there, but they might have revealed that in the previous season.
There was just just the tiniest line of dialogue. Oh,
wait, shit! They were in his apartment cleaning it out. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Amy gave me a great tip on the apartment and that house.
And then that episode where Dickie was cleaning it out and Mabel and Topper were sneaking in there. I remember that now. Yeah. And it's just things like more people get killed there than in the fucking projects.
So it's just, it does stand out. And of course, Detective Williams has pretty much mapped out
I like her.
the route to the this again. But I loved her entrance into Sitspro. It's like everybody shut this damn thing down. I'm thinking all downtown. It's
right.
Can we keep rehearsing? Can you just do this?
Hey, the Sitspro is important.
Mm-hmm. And you should catch this guy's performance. Is hilarious. Mm-hmm. But it does seem like it's a lot for a show that's only had 30 episodes. So I'm really looking forward to season 4. But oh my god, it'd have to be my favorite character.
Everybody likes
she was so much fun every time she came.
Besides, it's played by Jane Lynch. She doesn't love Jane Lynch.
Oh, it's just wonderful. It's a much different character than Sue Sylvester on Glee, but it's a really fun show because of her in some ways. And it's like, oh, you guys are really going to lose that,
right?
But so many people die, but they're still in the show because they're still in flashbacks.
She'll be in the flashbacks definitely. We'll probably see more of their backstory because she was his stunt double,
which I thought was amazing. Right. This is, oh my god, a stunt double for Steve Martin. Who's it going to be? Who thought Jane Lynch? Brilliant!
Right?
Oh my god!
You know it's going to be a butch ass lesbian. That works perfectly.
So the show. I love. Like you were saying, the representation, it's New York. It's like, goddamn, it's the Anti-Friends. It's like, how on earth did you find the whitest little conclave in,
with Friends and all that?
To have, cameras in, because it's like, did any of these people even know people of color?
Right?
It was through the 90s in New York. How did you know? Lord, it's a pretty diverse town if you actually lived there.
Exactly. In this one episode, with Williams, the cops, there's one episode with her and her wife, them just talking about having a baby and blah blah blah. Just their regular domestic life was just treated as a completely normal thing, and I loved that.
I loved it. It was just really wonderful writing, and it was just
how many black lesbian couples do you get on TV?
Them.
Yeah.
It's just good. It's just good to have a show like that, and like you said, just it's unconcerned about it. It's completely unbothered about how it happened. I'm just going to represent this town.
Exactly.
You get to you get to see yourself and you get to see your life kind of represented in a way you really don't. And even if you object to how, it's like, well, you know what? These are just people living their lives.
Exactly. So one thing that always bugs me with a lot of representation, like especially nowadays, you have shows like, say, like with like female leads, minority leads, LGBT leads, so on and so forth. Like, that's great. But the problem is, the show kind of ends up becoming on the nose by turning the character into a walking public service announcement. Yeah. Where this person can't just exist in the world. They have to drop this long-ass monologue about the prejudice they face. Like, why do minority lives have to be put through the filter of how we relate to white people? That's ridiculous.
I really love that about this show, because that energy is not present.
Exactly.
We're telling a story. We have this amount of time to do it.
Oh, I'm black and gay for everybody listening at home. I know it doesn't carry through with my voice, but picture a 6'4" black man, and you're good to go.
Oh, it was just, I was remembering a line from Psych as one of the names that Sean gave Dule Hill's character. Guys, was Lodge Black Man.
Right? What show was this?
Oh, Psych. It was on USA. Yeah. Lord, that was such a funny show. But
I've heard, my roommate used to love that show. I haven't actually watched it myself.
And I'm here with my friend Lodge Black. So, no, I really appreciate your time, and thank you for this conversation. I love the show.
Right.
You love the show. We're looking forward to seeing it.
It's like my favorite comedy on TV right now.
It's one of it's one of the best shows I've seen.
Absolutely.
It just generally, it was a departure this year because of the theater focus, but, you know, I'm a theater geek, so I
wouldn't even call it a departure. Like, they were both already in that world.
Yeah, it just focused on it more, because the first season was just, like, establishing the podcast, so that almost felt like it was forced in, because they always had to talk about, like, the equipment that they were using, and, like, your presence is consent to be recording, and that kind of thing, and as this season went, it was like Mabel was cobbling together a group of people to work with. Taubert and Nathan Lane's son, but
Theo.
Theo, thank you.
He's cute.
Some very nice character. Yeah. Oh yeah, speaking of representation, just having the silent episode, it was really interesting. So,
definitely.
I think that was, it's groundbreaking television, and I can't wait to see what they do with it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
On this.
Thank you, Brad. Brad Johnson, everyone. Thank you so much. You know, along with the murders themselves driving the true crime investigations, I want to note that the side plots enliven the stories enormously. What with the grave-robbing deli magnate, the true crime diva, the glitter bomb, a mysterious oil painting of Charles's father and his lover, bloody Mabel running through the streets of Manhattan in a wedding dress, and the fact that the building is just riddled with secret passages, which brought clues shared by Charles's strange stepdaughter figure, not to mention Jane Lynch's his delightful stunt double, Saz. Seriously, this was me hoping for Saz to have her own Addams Family flavored spinoff, where Jan gets out early for good behavior or escapes or something, just moves in with her. They're just delightfully naughty. I love all the callbacks and the references. Father of the Bride, obviously, and then Steve Martin's character, Matthew Broderick, appearing as himself in Oliver's apartment was hilarious. Are you still here? It's over. Go home. I want this show to run for the rest of my life. I also wonder how many more seasons it would have before any would-be murderer with any shred of self-preservation would at least take their victim outside first. Oh, right, this is the one with those damn true crime podcasters and it solve everything. Whatever's actually going on, it did feel like the crew is drifting apart. Mabel's moving out of the building just further distances the characters. Indeed, two of them seem to be toying with the idea of moving to LA. Or is that just what I'm meant to believe? Because I'm guessing the last 5 minutes of that third season finale is going to impact some of those plans for sure. I'm just thrilled beyond words that season 4 is in the works. I love this show. I love these characters. And I love all the delightful scrapes we've been made privy to in this twisted, topsy-turvy building with its ever darker history. Only Murders in the Building. What a fantastic show.
I associate many things with many things.
Cross Connection. Well, for Only Murders, it's the Three Amigos, right? I mean, Steve Martin and Martin Short appeared together in the 1986 release of The Three Amigos alongside someone Yvette Nicole Braun recently described as, well, he seems nice. That expands on my community discussion, episode 73, 6 seasons in the movie. Check that out if you like. But yeah, no, we're not just looking over all the former projects everyone's in together. We're looking for connections, mystical centers of this media collection, which so far pencil out as appearing in 6 Feet Under, appearing in Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, or appearing in a Ryan Murphy production. In this case, both Steve Martin and Martin Short worked with Mo Collins in the 2004 movie Jimmy, Glick, and Lollywood, which, how the hell did that get made? I'd never heard of this thing. Were they embarrassed? Mo Collins appeared in 6 Feet Under, so the link is already tight. Martin Short also appeared in Taxi with Judd Hirsch at Studio 60, and he was in Arrested Development, which was hilarious. Steve Martin appeared in All of Me with Lily Tomlin, who was in The West Wing with everyone from Studio 60, and he was in Roxanne, LA Story, and appeared as Dr. Orange Trevello, DDS, in Little Shop of Horrors. But as I also mentioned a couple of times by now, I'm old, so I'm least familiar with Selena Gomez's work. Fortunately, she is the easiest of any of these to track. Ms. Gomez appeared in this quirky little star cluster called The Dead Don't Die, with Bill Murray, Tilda Swinton, Adam Driver, Danny Glover, Steve Buscemi, Iggy Pop, Carol Kane, Rosie Perez, and RZA, and probably Meryl Streep, Forrest Whitaker, and Sir Patrick Stewart. And what, were Helen Mirren, Daniel Craig, and Anne Hathaway not available? Seriously, who was... Ellen Lewis was in charge of casting this thing. The Dead Don't Die grossed more than 15 million worldwide. I never heard of it. Nowhere on my radar. 2019, not a peep. Had all these mega boffo stars in it with cross connections absolutely everywhere. But more to the point, Ms. Selena Gomez appeared in this 2019 release, The Dead Don't Die, with Chloe Sevigny, who is in the Ryan Murphy production of American Horror Stories, Asylum, and Hotel Installments. Gomez also starred in the 2014 production of Behaving Badly with Patrick Warburton, Heather Graham, Scott Evans, and Gary Busey, as well as Mary Louise Parker of Aaron Sorkin's The West Wing and Dylan McDermott of American Horror Stories. So, wow, she in her young life has been cast as some pretty high-profile stuff for me to from completely in the dark as to her existence. 17 top 10 hits, including 2 chart toppers. Just put me in my grave already. The main point being, nothing in Only Murders is much removed from the mystical centers of my media collection through the principal cast. And mentioned her a couple of times, Saz, Jane Lynch, was in the Ryan Murphy production of Glee, so direct tie there for the whole thing. Oh, and the actress Brad mentioned, the Daredevil and the Iron Fist. That was Wei Ching Ho as Madame Gao. Good eye. The show is phenomenal. I'm so glad we at least got season 4 to look forward to. Now, let's see if we can get Whoopi Goldberg to move into the Arconia. My understanding is that the penthouse is open again. In other connections, I was intrigued by the Dennis Haysbert callbacks as President Palmer in the 4th season episodes of 24, particularly where he's occasionally interrupting himself with his appearances in Allstate commercials. I also found Tai Ma from Kung Fu in an episode of 24. That was cool. I found a bunch of episodes of Monk in this set featuring, Moon Bloodgood, Nicole Sullivan, Wade Williams of Prison Break, and by now well-established Golden Thread character actors Patrick Fischler and Mark A. Shepard. This set also introduces us to Trailer Howard as Natalie, and on disc 1522, it looks like I started archiving episodes of Alias, probably for the guest starring appearances by Angel actor Amy Acker, but I also encounter Ron Rifkin and Balthazar Getty from Brothers and Sisters, Rachel Nichols from Point Pleasant, Victor Garber from Eli Stone. I noticed Drew Goddard from the Buffy series and Cabin in the Woods was a writer for the Mockingbird episode of Alias, so nice. Then, on disc 1511, I found Michael Rappaport in his first of 2 appearances in Jenna Elfman's 2009 comedy Accidentally on Purpose. His character here made sense, and I liked his second season work in Only Murders in the Building, but this guy is tough. I guess when you branded yourself as uncompromising, you figure out the hottest possible take and you just spit that bitch. Gotta separate the actor from his roles, but he vibed with this awful network executive and bamboozled a bit too well, and his antagonist in Prison Break was far from endearing. Anyway, I enjoyed the first few clips I saw him post to Threads, and then October 7 happened, and Michael decided to open his mouth, and I understand reactions, the whole range of reactions people might well have to the atrocities the internet made sure we all saw from these indefensible attacks. But then Israel's initial response seemed, to my safe, way over here perspective, to be breathtakingly disproportionate, and mostly, is this safe? Is it woke? Is it triangulated? Sure, maybe, but yeah, my hard stance is stop murdering innocent civilians. Too many have died in this outrage already, and lashing out won't bring a single one of them back. certainly known as help by making impossible situations worse. Michael Rappaport's multiple daily threads placing all the blame squarely on one side, to my mind, oversimplifies the situation and could itself use some moderation, just unfollowed. Now on VideoFuzzy, a fond reflection. And just as I'd finished putting this together, moved on my news feed the passing of Matthew Perry, and I'll just share what I posted on my Facebook. You knew him as Chandler Bing, and that was great. I enjoyed him myself. It was a huge role, and he was well cast. I also enjoyed a struggling comedy writing perfectionist named Matt Albee for a single season of Aaron Sorkin's Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, always fighting that countdown clock to the next episode, as well as his Season 5 Dimensions legal advisor to Jed Bartlett's White House on the West Wing. He took a couple more stabs at comedy in Go On and Mr. Sunshine, but never quite recaptured the magic of content and delivery that we saw in those efforts. Even the guest spot in Cougar Town felt a bit obligatory, despite seasons worth of chemistry with Courtney Cox. So, if I'm remembering Matthew Perry having the time of his life at the head of a great big Gulf Haven marching band playing Hooked on a Feeling, just leave him there in the midst of that fleeting, joyful moment. It's heartfelt, bittersweet, and whatever was going on with him, love left unexpressed. I can't imagine him not knowing the regard and esteem fans held for him, but I've got no window on that. Whatever I could feel for him, let that fuel his journey home. That clock has finally stopped, sir. Time enough to rest. Diving into my classic collection. For my classic collection, cataloging my VHS to DVD transfers for this set, I cataloged discs 1501 through 1525, which included a few premieres along with a few dedicated entries. I found the series premiere of Prison Break on disc 1501, series premiere of Kitchen Confidential on disc 1502, alongside the third season premiere of Arrested Development. The third episode of Kitchen Confidential actually featured John Larroquette. Ah, man, that would have been a much better close to cross-connection than Michael Rappaport. Sorry. Also found had to mute Josh Gad on Threads for pretty much the same reason. Wild. Anyway, I also encountered an apocalypse-flavored miniseries on NBC called Revelations Omnium Finis Imminent, featuring a prisoner transfer from the Vatican, I guess. Michael Massey as Isaiah Hayden, the Antichrist, apparently, who murdered the daughter of a scientist, Bill Pullman as Dr. Richard Massey, in a ritual sacrifice, I guess, to bring about the end times. Tracking these signs and portents is Natasha McElhone as Sister Josepha Montefiore. I got 5 of the 6 installments they aired archived, somehow missed episode 5, Kel Damage. As the series progresses, our Antichrist is popping in and out of prison at will. He's a television celebrity using his platform as, a super charismatic child-murdering Satanist. You know how much social influence those types wield. Through these televised appearances, the show suggests are mandated by him asserting his civil rights. He's talking directly to prisonfuls of inmates who then get all agitated and riled up by his message. Because, prison guards are disinterested in nascent mass hysteria and rarely seek to de-escalate situations, particularly ones that can be solved by a TV remote. Even if, and this is a huge if, even if Hayden's civil rights demanded he be given a televisual platform, absolutely no one on this earth is obligated to tune in. Oh, you want to watch the fun Antichrist Satanist child murder on a talk show? Complete your sentence, go home and watch anything you like. That channel is blocked in here. The suggestion that the date and the hour of the Antichrist's appearance would be linked to Phoebe, a moon orbiting Saturn in retrograde, is hard to fathom, and that this moon's orbit would be predicted by a gaudy trapper-keeper illuminated in the 12th century or something is frankly silly. The end of the world, explored in 2005 by people trying so hard to justify their apocalyptic fantasies via the scientific method, there is no floor. It's spooky religious nonsense, once again seeking to sow fear and mistrust at a time when Homeland Security was eroding our actual civil rights in front of our eyes. Shows like these get made. It's always a great idea to look at the underlying message and see what kind of agenda it's promoting. Speaking of prisoners, however, I sat with the run-up and finale of The Prisoner, original series from 1967, rebroadcast on IFC, which gave this bizarre production an utterly wackadoo send-off. I'll start with episode 16, Once Upon a Time, the run-up to the finale, which appeared on disc 1524. It opened with a darkly avuncular number 2. Everyone in the village seems to have a number, even the ones ostensibly in charge. Number 2 is threatened with a guard bubble rover that puts him right off his breakfast. He determines the only course of action remaining to finally get inside number 6's head is a black box simulacrum mirroring his formative years to explore his motivations and discover once and for all why he submitted his resignation. There are several issues. The whole installation of the village in which Patrick McGoohan has just been basking in the title role has to one degree or another been applying psychological pressure on him from the start. Each new wave, every new attempt to induce confusion, conformity, anxiety, paranoia, or distress has been met, and he has overcome. If 15 episodes of that haven't worked, how is subjecting him to terrible amateur theatrics going to make any difference? Also, the suggestion is that this ultimate maneuver is so intense that one or the other of them, number 2 or number 6, will not make it out alive. I've seen Tennessee Williams productions with more psychological intensity than what was playing out on that soundstage. And I mean for the audience. This was supercilious sophistry, not to mention something that looked like it was supposed to simulate a courtroom but looked more like Tinker Toys. If I was meant to understand that number 2 reading nursery rhymes to number 6 while he was in bed with the overhead lamp applied directly to his face was supposed to be anything other than annoying, it missed the mark. People conducting actual psyops would probably look at this queer little village set up with its surrealistic Lewis Carrollisms or piquant little departures from the usual order of things. The guard rover bubbles are certainly intriguing, and wonder when they get to start. In any event, no reason for either number 2 or number 6 to die at the end of that. Indeed, neither of them seem to have. As the trial sequence of the final episode gets underway, number 2 seems to have just gotten what I meant to understand as a terribly humiliating shave. But oh yeah, before the trial, while we're still here in Once Upon a Time, with its bizarre pacing and its self-contained, apparently mobile prison compartment, what on earth could it possibly matter why number 6 resigned? Why wouldn't they already know? And why do they care? They're entirely in control of his life. I mean, he can't escape. He can't contact the outside world. It's right there in the title. It was clear that number 6's breakthrough in the final scenes was artifice. He'd been adapting to their methods for weeks now. Him locking number 2 in the prison compartment was the most artificial thing at all, and along with number 2's histrionic reactions, the most arbitrary countdown to his own death. As I move to my discussion of the series finale, episode 17, Fallout, I'll just note the funniest job I saw listed in the credits. They gave someone the task of continuity for this production, which, seriously, what was she ever going to do on that set? Send her home. Anyway, it turned out number 6 defeated number 2 by not succumbing to his blowhard browbeating when he was done with that and demanding an audience with number 1, which he'd been demanding in the opening credits for this entire production. All he needed to do was ask the supervisor. If I thought Once Upon a Time was the most ridiculous and indulgent episode in this production, the finale, Fallout, blew it out of the water. Number 6 is led to a blue throne. Just beneath him sits a judge. Across from the judge sits a panel of white-robed harlequins who seem to be somehow in charge of municipal operations of the village, including electric, television, communications, and so forth. And the judge is deeply deferential as the ordination process continues, but we must follow protocols, he breezes. The first prisoner before the bench is number 48. He refuses to acknowledge his number. He's dressed as a comic fop. He bursts endlessly into the Dem Bones song, which I guess they wanted to use All You Need Is Love, but couldn't get the rights. Just as well, I would have hated that song by the end of this episode. Next up was number 2, and he was on trial for something else, but frankly it didn't seem like it mattered. Everything was so arch and theatrical and counterculture and groovy, baby. And when number 6's determination was finally resolved and he rose, now fully in charge, to address the assembly, he couldn't get a word in edgewise. Battle just kept shouting him down with no means of making himself heard. This made it feel like this was just some new level of mind control and manipulation. Sure, he wasn't locked up in the trial room. Sure, he was sitting on what seemed like a throne, but nothing had transpired that made the space he was in any less a prison than anywhere else in the village. He, number 6, tried to confront number 1 directly, stuck it would seem in some kind of communication tube. He stuck in the communication tunnels and encountered more of the robe mimics on the way to a door marked number 1. He spun him around to find that number 1 was gibbering at him like an idiot, for number 6 unmasked him first as a monkey and then as a madman who fled out an escape hatch never to be heard from again. The whole construct of the village started to unravel like a dream sequence. Number 6, now number 1, joined number 2 and number 48 in the mobile prison compartment, which was driven down the highway to London, and the 3 idiots dancing around in it dropped off here and there at different spots to, I guess, whatever the next stage their adventures held. It seemed like number 6 got to resume his life from whenever it was that the Undertaker yoinked him out of his timeline, fresh new motor car and everything. The show was probably trippy and raised questions about counterculture, rebellion, and propriety at a time when I'm pretty sure those concepts were top of mind for viewers. Free love and drug culture were raising questions about stability in the social order. All of these are perfectly good issues to raise and explore, but what the hell was that? It seems to me like the show highlighted surreal experiences and weird for the sake of weird, and then held them up as being any way analogous to how the real world is organized. It's kind of why it fell completely apart in the end. As I've said before, in order for any metaphor to be valid, it has to have some real-world application. In this case, the village was a perfect metaphor for something, but did not hold up especially well at all. This might have taken too long, but my suggestion for the series finale, instead of that whole trippy go-nowhere trial foofara, I suggest number 6 wake up in his home, the one we saw him abducted from in the pilot episode, repeated in the opening credits every episode since, that he just wake up in his home and very cautiously resume his life. As he ventures from his home, as he explores his neighborhood, he is never impeded at any point, but catches glimpses of a series-long incarceration. A man rides by on a penny farthing. A shopkeeper is the same one from the village. There's an occasional analyst making some notation in a clipboard, and when he returns to his home, there's a supper waiting for him, and he's the worst time determining whether he should eat it or not. As he sinks into bed, he thinks he saw the light move, and we see him lying awake in the darkness, wondering if he's free or imprisoned, and wondering if this dread will be on him for the rest of his life. I mean, it's not a cackling madman and a choir of white-robed harlequins butchering dem bones, but if the show is ending anyway, I feel like this would have made whatever point it thought it was going for a little stronger. Oh, and I ran into a whole bunch of nutty ads in this set, a few cute ones, and then one went way overboard. First, the city commercial, the Live Richly from 2005, featured this cute little old couple standing in what appears to be their backyard singing a happy, sunny side of life, self-accompanied by zither and mandolin. In the end, the wife calls the husband out for forgetting the middle part, and he says, "Oh, nobody noticed that." It's just, they're so cute. I wish the ad had credited them, because not only is the harmony centered the happy, sunny side of life a bluegrass standard in its own right, but it's too similar to the sunny side of life for internet searches to differentiate. Anyway, whoever they are, they reminded me of my folks. I really loved finding this ad. Then, just in time for spooky season, I found an ad for Eclipse Gum. The establishment shot locates a rundown RV parked in a junkyard. Inside, a giant onion has fallen asleep watching horror movies.
This night of suspense brought to you by Eclipse Gum.
It jolts awake with the mention of Eclipse Gum. Where we find bad breath, we kill it. Onion screams a little and quickly turns the set off. He's just calming back down when the phone rings. He shuffles across to pick it up and the voice intones, "Dead Onion says what?" To which the Onion says, "What?" And a pack of Eclipse Gum shoots across the floor like a grenade, smacking the Onion on the foot, and he screams in realization, spontaneously combusts. Eclipse, when we find bad breath, we kill it. Very cute. Both of these ads turned up on disc 1503, and I found them on YouTube. Links in my show notes. Oh, and Smirnoff ran 3 ads in a row during a presentation of the 4th season 24. First one, we meet Russian broski Yori enjoying post-Soviet winter with sled dogs in his living room. He gives us a tour of his home and his fridge, which steps through the outside, where Smirnoff ice are in a bucket of snow, which he says is perfect temperature. He hands one to Brohe Gore, and they raise a toast, the beautiful winter's view. In the second one, Lori and Gore are driving a Mad Max car frame pulled by the sled dogs. All the huskies jump in the sled when Yuri parks, and one barks and Yuri says, "That's what I call car alarm." He and Gore head in. He leaves his whip behind the bar because he does not wish to drink and sled. The last one, Yuri attends a gallery opening. He joins a beautiful woman in admiring sculpture by famous Russian sculptor. He pops the top of his Smirnoff on the art, making a distinct impression on this beautiful young woman who was enjoying the art and is now smitten with Yuri. It was a cute set of commercials, suggesting young people in post-Soviet Russia are just the same as young people anywhere, and this music-loving metalhead with his unbothered life is just Russian-flavored cool, and why not? It'll sell just as much vodka as whatever's actually going on over there in 2005, I'm sure. Then I found this ad for the Uno Attack game on disc 1507, and I can only find the first half of this commercial on YouTube, but that link is in there as well. It's a remix of the 50s flavored ad from the early 2000s, adding this Uno Attack card shuffler thingy that, according to its marketing, randomly spits as many as 8 cards at you. The ad made it look like a big evil animated bug, but it's just a shuffler. The last half of the ad promoted see-through waterproof cards for playing Uno poolside. According to Walmart.com, the Uno Attack is still being sold nearly 2 decades later, price tag nearly $50. Clear cards I'm seeing available for $10 to $20. I believe I would fire my development team if they basically come up with a way to make a game that is a pack of cards prohibitively more expensive. The decks themselves are pretty manageable for $5 or so. The new sets include new rules and customizable cards. I'm a traditionalist. You kids get off my lawn and take your shufflers and clear plastic cards with you. I'm going to close this section with a couple of process pieces. One's almost a callback to episode 9, troubleshooting, backtracking, and fact-checking, and episode 32, we used to be friends, although in this case the human error in tracking information came from the production team for the show itself. First, though, in tracking down an episode of Flash Forward, there was very little to go on. The episode began. Even the dialogue was sparse. Often I'll look to the last entry in that series in my cataloging effort, or check the credits for guest stars who might have only made an appearance in that one episode, identify it that way. It's usually a pretty reliable approach. In this case, however, what was catching my ear was a song running over the opening sequences. I listened a little harder and tried to hear lyrics I could search. I came up with "This dumb time in this dumb place, that's where we're living." Interesting. Well, it kind of fit the attitude for that show, so I gurgled those lyrics. My search returned bupkis. I tried isolating phrases, "this dumb time" and "this dumb place," and came up with nothing. I isolated the third phrase that I could hear, "place, that's where we're living," and that got a bingo. It returned Pearl Jam's Unthought Known, which, okay, now I understand why the other searches went off the mark. Eddie's actually singing "distant time, distant place, that's where we're living." Unthought Known is off their 2009 Backspacer LP release, which also features Got Some If You Need It, the song I added to my collection after cataloging Conan O'Brien's June 2009 debut on The Tonight Show. With that information, I was able to confirm the Flash Forward episode the song appeared in, episode 8, Playing Cards with Coyote, and properly cataloged the episode. I didn't add Unthought Known, however, at least not at this dumb time or this dumb place. Anyway, moving on from my spectacular ability to mishear anything, here's the callback I was making to prior cataloging goofs. The first was entirely on me. I was over-relying on some of my existing catalog to predict and thereby name what shows and episodes were playing on my screen when next they turned up. Oh, I just saw episode 8 of the Bionic Woman reboot. This one must be episode 9. I'm glad I figured out early that way lies chaos in this archive. Next, I noticed that IMDb is only as good as the people updating it. I found improbable discrepancies between IMDb's listing for We Bear Bears episodes and the FanWiki listing. The We Bear Bears fan listing seemed to be way more accurate, episode and season grouping wise, so I added another layer of researching skills and source materials to explore when I'm seeking this kind of information. What I encountered on disc 1523 frankly baffled me. The tail end of a sitcom called Freddy showed up ahead of the episode I recorded of Lost, and there was a credit for Dory Barton as Trish, which character name IMDb spelled differently, then for Michelle Borth as Nikki and Richard Koogman as Kurt, which was out of order for the way IMDb usually lists characters in its listing. And that's all fine because I'm not keeping episodes of Freddy anyway. I was just going to use it to nail down which episode of Lost I was watching, which, as it turns out, was going to be pretty obvious, but this is where I was starting. And that's the thing. Dory, Michelle, and Richard are each listed as appearing in one episode of Freddy, which IMDb lists as airing on November 2nd, 2005. It floats right into the next episode, an episode of Lost, and there is no episode listed as airing on November 2nd, 2005. Season 2 of Lost goes from episode 2-5 and Found on October 19th to episode 2-6, Abandoned, on November 9th. Now, the fact that the character names are misspelled and out of order as first-run sitcom by Freddie Prinze Jr. versus a well-funded, well-staffed international televisual phenomenon in its second season being breathlessly followed by millions makes me think the episode of Lost was documented correctly and the episode of Freddy probably was not, but I was intrigued. It was actually season 2, episode 3, Orientation, with a reported air date of October 5th, 2005, so curiouser and curiouser. I could track this by guest star as well, Katie Sagal as Helen, who a flashback showed her meeting John Locke outside an AA meeting, and it was like, well, there's no mistaking that voice. I did a dialogue search and confirmed which of her 4 appearances I was watching. The first one, which weirdly enough also refuses to line up with Freddy's airing schedule. Freddy reportedly didn't start airing episodes until October 12th, and this one is, like I said, having aired November 2nd. Further weirdness, the first producer credit is Eileen Keseshian, co-produced by Melissa Gelino and associate produced by Stephen Mesner, all of whom produced 19 episodes of this show, including the first 3, but none of them are credited for episode 4. So, we've almost certainly got wandering credits. Stephen Luro is listed as the executive story editor for 2 episodes, including episode 2, The Food Critic, which is the only episode he's credited for as of October 5th, or technically October 19th, since no episodes of Freddy are listed as having aired as of October 5th, and then get to the guest starring credits, which make me think I'm watching episode 4, After Hours. This, however, was probably episode 2, The Food Critic. The director of photography, production designer, editing, production management, assistant director, costume design, makeup, hairstyling, script, set, and music credits all conform to The Food Critic, so that's probably the scrap of show that I've got, and someone on the production staff probably messed up reporting the credits. But it opens a tiny and somewhat drab window on why actor India King is credited as having appeared in the After Hours episode, but her character had no name. In the Food Critic episode, she's at least listed as a waitress, albeit an uncredited one. I only went to this level of detail because it highlights the clues I use to figure out what I'm watching. The information that IMDb is compiled by fallible human beings, and sitting here now I can't possibly know exactly what I was watching back in what appears to be the fall of 2005. For sure, Orientation wasn't aired any earlier than its initially listed air date on IMDb. Lost fans were obsessed with details, and both could have been back-to-back reruns, but why get the acting credits wrong? Meh, you can look and you can track and you can survive, but the best you can say is, okay, well, I've got Jack asking John Locke if pushing a button makes any sense to him, and an Orientation video, which I absolutely stopped and watched. That show was incredible. This isn't the only weirdness I encountered with this episode. There's a promotion for an upcoming episode of Hope and Faith, which, if the air date for Lost was correct, should have been October 7th, episode 3, where Faith's niece tells her teacher that Faith died in order to get more time on a term paper. The episode being promoted has the women taking pole dancing classes, which looks like episode 7 of that season, which aired November 4th. I'm thinking that our local affiliate must have just aired any damn thing whenever they blurry well felt like it, and we just got dragged along for the ride. And as mysteries go, the stakes are pretty low. I mean, this is absolutely the Orientation episode, so everything else just seems goofy. Probably Lost was a rerun because the promo for Hot Properties was also for the November 4th episode, and the Extreme Makeover Home Edition promoted had an air date of November 6th, suggesting that the episode of Lost had indeed aired October 5th and just re-aired November 2nd. But I'd been archiving Lost in real time, so it was seriously too weird. Plus side, this is probably the most attention an episode of Freddy has ever received ever, so yay. Checking out my current collection. I mentioned episode 7 of VideoFuzzy, the soundtrack, and yes, you should be listening to that. I listen to all kinds of stuff. What the hell? Though we said goodbye to my dad last month, and I was able to share some comments from him about how he was listening to music in recent years, physical media like CDs, but also streaming services like SiriusXM and YouTube. He started talking about listening over Midco as well, but the conversation started drifting, which is just fine. I mostly just enjoyed the chance to spend some time and chat a bit. Since that episode posted, we had his service, and I appreciated the chance to celebrate his life with family and friends and share some of my memories as well. That link is in my show notes. I got after a sewing project at my place, which meant some screen time. I got after some Netflix I'd wanted to watch for a while, including the live-action One Piece. I'd seen some of it on Adult Swim, but I knew virtually nothing about the show. I watched up to where Luffy gets his boat, but even that skips past, the gaining of superpowers by way of demon fruits, Captain Luffy at the Straw Hat Pirates, it's super stretchy, putting his crew together, including the world's greatest swordsman, the world's best thief, acquiring a map and encounters with scary clowns, a kindly shipyard heiress, and a malevolent butler who just happens to be a treasonous ex-pirate with, super speed. It's been a fun introduction to a wild universe, and while it's clearly taken younger audiences into account, I've enjoyed it quite a lot. It's got good energy and infectious positivity. On a potentially much darker vein, I finally watched The Umbrella Academy, also based on graphic novels about a mysterious eccentric billionaire who adopts 7 children of 43 known or reported products of spontaneous birth. That is, the mothers were unaware of pregnancy until the moment they gave birth. It probably shouldn't surprise us that they have superpowers, but the kind that they have are pretty awesome. One is violently telekinetic, one has the power of suggestion, one's got insanely strong tentacles that pop out of him, one talks to dead people, and one is able to move about in time. There are other powers, but the truly astonishing thing is that they survived their childhood. We saw the telekinetic one attacking multiple nannies for the crime of serving them oatmeal, and that sequence only ended when the billionaire crafted an indestructible android they could call Mom. In fact, it took their adopted father's death to pull them all together again, one from his sentry station on the moon, during which Vigil, the time traveler, reappeared, looking none the worse after decades of surviving an imminent apocalypse and assassin training as a time agent. Through esoteric math errors, his appearance reverts to that of a teenager when he rejoins his timeline already in progress. He was pursued by a couple of operatives under orders to kill him by the Commission, along with a mercurial sort of stylish Art Deco handler and her adopted daughter, and that's only one of the wild and exciting subplots that swirl through this reunion. Violent telekinetic is pushed to the brink of their patience and powers by a patricidal Umbrella Academy wannabe, time travelers seeking to avert the apocalypse while avoiding his former boss and the operatives she sent to target him, and in a desperate bid to avert cataclysmic destruction, he ends up scattering his brothers and sisters through the 1960s, where he somehow brings about nuclear war. It's all go on the Umbrella Academy, which features a ton of violence, destruction, and chaos, and someone is a goldfish in a human suit, but somehow you're rooting for these kids. There's just something about overcoming a clearly messed up childhood to try forging some path in this world. It's very dramatic, but I love the fearlessness of this writing and truly enjoying this production. As of this writing, I just started watching season 3 and Billionaire's second try with the Sparrow Academy, and 6 different and 1 the same, but also different spontaneous children with gifts of agility, anti-gravity, hallucination, reflection, tentacle guy again, and one is a floating box. I'm guessing that one worked better in the graphic novel. Sparrow Android Mom is clearly dealing with some stuff, probably supernatural. The last episode I watched looked like she'd summoned something. I can't wait to find out what. Other viewing, I took in the Mission Impossible trilogy, about which I recall next to nothing, and Don't Look Up, which I guess I preferred Meryl in Only Murders. I finally watched the 5th season of Arrested Development, and I don't have much to say about that either, beyond really preferred Will Arnett and BoJack Horseman. And as for the one episode of the Pentaveret I bothered with, I've preferred Mike Myers in everything else I've seen him in, including Halloween and a lot of vagina. Lest this podcast start to be a bit too Jay Sherman,
it stinks.
I did enjoy the especially dark critique of Adventure's real estate in Vivarium. Director Lorcan Finnegan and his co-writer Garrett Shanley are clearly working through some things. Imogen Poots and Jesse Eisenberg play Gemma and Tom, a bright young couple brimming with hope and love, and then they engage a house agent. Jack Hudson's realtor character drives them to a charming little development and vanishes. Gemma and Tom try to follow him out, but this little patch of suburbia seems self-recurrent. Wherever they go and in whatever direction they can't get away from their new home, which seems unbothered by anything they actually do, up to and including arson. Body and soul are kept together by regular deliveries of food and sundries, including, one day, an infant. The infant is a handful, to say the very least, because he's quite suddenly like 5 or something. He's a complete neurodivergent analog, and not a charming one, occasionally just opening his mouth and a storm siren of a scream comes out. Absolutely unwatchable. I kept my thumb ready on the mute button. That must have been insufferable in theaters. Oh, I see it was released in the US in March of 2020, so not really an issue then. Still, the parallels with life are bleak. The weirdness takes over the entire movie, and generally I've got to say, I enjoyed the way it kept all those what the heck is going on in here questions open all the way through to the end. I didn't know what Gemma and Tom had done to deserve this. I guess they woke up one morning with hope in their hearts. That's all the world needs to hear sometimes. On a brighter note, relatively, mostly, my DVR finally grabbed all 8 episodes of Lucky Hank so I could see them. I've got to say, well done, Bob. Bob Odenkirk delivers a deft touch and the perfect energy to this darkly comic situation, only hinted at in the pilot episode, which you'll recall was the only one I'd seen when I more or less dismissed it last time. It's been in the rearview long enough, I get fuzzy, and the scattery English department at Railton College seemed to get its act together a bit too unbelievably well by the finale, but the pacing and the focus of the piece was good. It was essentially a study centered on this broody, cantankerous academic who contemplates deeply and reacts reflexively. But be fair, his father abandoned him and his mother the very day he discovered his son in the process of committing suicide, and the 30 intervening years pursued his own career of academia and authorship. When Hank meets him, he's in the throes of dementia, so he can't even confront him properly about his feelings of abandonment, loss, and rage. Plotlines involve his flaky daughter and his mostly faithful wife, and maybe Hank joining her at her new job in New York. I'll close this section with a series debut on NBC called Found. Shanola Hampton is Gabby Mosley, bird with a broken wings her way into a serial abductor's home and rescues a child. She then points out that rich people's abducted children get way more found, generally, than poor's, and we see her team, individually quirky and driven to find and save all abducted children. Bless. I wanted to like this. It was dark and edgy, with Gabby holding her former captor captive in her basement. Mark Paul Gosselaar as Sir. Everyone's backstory was super compelling, but it's kind of what falls apart for me. Sir is one abductor with his own backstory and motivation. It doesn't mean he knows what's going on with others. Assuming Gabby has all the information there is on any given abduction, which is impossible or she'd have solved it already herself, Mark only knows what she tells him. He's not going to necessarily have any insights because, voila, he's been trapped in this woman's basement since she was like 14 or something. I understand the draw, but this is crime porn from the get-go, and I'm going to just give it a pass. You like it? Great. You can have mine. If I've learned anything at all in pursuing this cataloging process, is I spent far too much of my time watching Criminal Minds. I'm pretty much ready to leave this kind of programming in my rear view. What I've been watching. I mentioned my recent vacation. I watched some movies on the planes there and back, including No Hard Feelings, The Prestige, and spoiler alert, No Hard Feelings really demonstrated J. Law's comedic chops, good instincts, and heart in a difficult character at best. The Prestige, I loved that I finally got a chance to see that brilliant Michael Caine film. Kept me guessing all the way through this spooky steampunk exploration. And then, oh wow, Jim Parsons and spoiler alert, that was intense. Beautiful love story, beautifully written. Crunching some numbers. So, it's been more than a year and a half since my last one of these shows so far productions. My last by the numbers entry for VideoFuzzy, I do these every 10 episodes. Episode 80 posted in February of 2022. I don't know, I even remember February of 2022. I cataloged through disc 1275, so since then, as of this episode, I've cataloged through disc 1525, which, ta-da, is 250 discs. Not too surprising since I do one of these every 25 discs, and since then I've done 10 of them. But since then, I've also started my VideoFuzzy the soundtrack production, which absolutely takes the time that it does. Every month or so, I've released a new episode of something, give or take, and so far it's made a lot of sense to alternate the entries. So since I started that second podcast exploring my music collection, I've released 7 episodes, which covered a little over 1,300 songs with some 220 artists, which is about a third of my collection. Oh, I've got quite a long ways to go yet, but that is its own production. I'll get one of these put together for that when I get to it. For this set, the wild card is always always the current collection, which in this case covers the discs X439 through disc X495. And now we've got some math we can do. In the past 20 months, I've cataloged some 500 additional hours of my classic collection, some 336 more hours of my current collection, for a total of 836 additional hours of media, or a little over a month. On average, this brings my total to about 3,050 hours of my classic collection, more or less, and similarly about 2,970 hours of my current collection, which is more than 8 months. If you put disc 001 in a player right now and switch them out as you viewed them, the catalog portion of my collection would take you through the middle of 2024. As we move into these final binders, it's easy to see we're nearer the end than the beginning. My classic collection cuts off at 2,570 discs. I noted with this disc I've cataloged through disc 1525, so I have a little over 1,000 discs yet to catalog. Something like 40 more episodes left thereabouts. And I'm looking forward to every single one of them. But for right now, better get this one in the feed. Thanks again to my friend Brad for sharing his thoughts and insights on this one. That was awesome. And thank you all for checking my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com. For past episodes, add, subscribe, follow VideoFuzzy wherever you read your podcasts. And if you get a chance, check out my VideoFuzzy at the soundtrack entries as well. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my vlog or podcast sites via email to djaman1970@yahoo.com or through my VideoFuzzy pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing. It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find it together on VideoFuzzy.